What's up 3D designers, welcome to the first video on this channel. This channel is mainly going to be about 3D and design in general, and yeah, for this video in specific I came up with an idea for a tutorial, and I want to make a tutorial about how I created this following effect right here. So I did a project a while back that was called Subsurface Words, and I did those 3D illustrations of font that's like floating in the air, and I also had this one, and this one in particular I want to make a video on because I want to show you guys how you can create those sort of indents in the geometry, and we will be doing this in Side Effects Houdini. So let's open up Houdini. If you don't have Houdini yet, you can just download it from the internet. The apprentice version is actually free, so if you don't use it for commercials, you can just download it. And let's start with this setup right here. So at first I just started with a simple grid, and I just gave the grid some more rows and columns, so 250 to be precise. And I then placed down a mountain sub to give it some displacement. And yeah, it's just not very noisy displacement, it's just some bigger waves that we have in here. I then added a transform, and actually this transform has a keyframe on the y-axis, so it's moving up and downwards. I can show you this. So I have here on frame 1 I have a keyframe at -3.5, and then at the end at 500 frames I have a keyframe at 6, so this thing is basically moving upwards. And I then take a attribute create node, create an attribute called normal, and so you just type an n, and it's going to be a point attribute, type float, and size 3 because it's going to be a vector. Normal is always a vector, and we just want it to be pointing upwards, so you can just type in 1 right here. We can also visualize this. So if I tick this little box on, we can see that now we have normals which are facing like straight up. They are not actually perpendicular to the faces, but they are just pointing straight up, and we need those normals in order to extrude the whole block, and that's what I did right here. So I extruded this block, and I then added some normals to fix the shading. And then we have a whole boolean operation. So on the other side we start with a line, just a simple line. Let me enable the points right here. So this line has only 2 points, and we then going to resample that so it has 5 points. We can then just transform it down a little bit. I just did that. You can just copy my settings for that, because that way it worked best. Then we have a copy to points, and we are copying a grid. So this simple grid just with 2 rows by 2 columns, and we are copying this to the line. So now on every point of the line that we had, we have a grid. And now this is being fed with the other geometry that we built into a boolean. And this boolean, what this boolean is doing is it's subtracting b minus a. In the following you can see what it's actually doing, or you can't see it because the normals are messed up. But what it's doing is, as I already said, we have b minus a, so we're taking this complex, so this one right here, those grids, and we are subtracting this block from them, so we then get those little pieces. And I just dropped down a fuse just to fuse some points that were not fused already, and you can then drop down a normal to get rid of those shading artifacts, and we can then poly extrude it, and we already start seeing this effect that I showed you in the beginning. And you can also drop down a poly bevel, of course, just to smooth out those corners. And with a poly bevel, you of course have to say that it should ignore the flat edges, and the maximum normal angle is 30. It worked pretty well for that. And of course you can just take the distance up to whatever you like. And next thing I did is I created a group called upper faces. So you can see it selected only the upper faces, and the way I did this is by, in the group node you can click keep by normals, and you can enable this, and direction just on the, so this is X, this is Y, this is Z. So on the Y we want 1, so on every single geometry block it's taking basically the upper face. And we then can take a facet sub, because I used this because the shading is a little messed up. You can see it if you go a little closer like this, and if you then drop down to normal, the shading is fixed again. So normal is just on the vertices, and yeah, you can drop down a color or whatever, but that's the main process behind it. In fact, I showed you at the beginning that I also animated this thing. And I did this to have an animation, of course, so you could have it animate. I can show you this really quick. So as the geometry that we built is moving through, so it's moving from keyframed it at minus 3.5 I think, and it's moving up to 6 on the y-axis. And as it's moving through, it's creating this geometry right here, and you can just, animate it, or you can just, if you say, okay, this scene right here, I like this, you can just right click on it and say save, and save geometry, and then you can just save it out as an BGO or OBJ or whatever you like, and take it to your 3D software of choice for shading, for rendering. Yep, and that's already it for today's tutorial. I hope you liked it, and you can tell me in the comments if I can do what I can do better, or if you have any tips on how to improve this setup. Yep, and that's really it for today. Thanks for watching.